be consolidated, Mr. Whitehouse? Are we doing?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Looking for a nod or, yep,
Okay.
we have a nod from Mr. Fuqua.
And we got the affirmative indication from Mr. Fuqua. So I'm going to introduce both of these. We will have one public hearing so that we don't have to have
most likely
duplications, but we will have to act on each of those separately. So the first item is ordinance number 22-07. It is an ordinance to amend the future land use map of the comprehensive plan in relation to tax parcels 135-15.00, 98.00, and 98.01. And the second item that will be considered at the same time is conditional use number 2369, filed on behalf of Leeward Chase DE LLC, and that short title is an ordinance to grant a conditional use of land in an agricultural residential district for multifamily dwellings, 106 units, to be located on a certain parcel of land lying and being in Georgetown 100, Sussex County, containing 50.80 acres, more or less. Mr. Whitehouse.
Thank you. First to Ordinance 2207. Specifically, the request is to amend the commercial area designation of the future land use map to the developing area. Submitted into the record for this ordinance, we have a copy of the applicant's application form and their exhibits, and a copy of the ordinance that was introduced by County Council at its meeting of January 3rd. We also have a copy of the applicant's statement 2+, and we also have received 0 comments in relation to the ordinance. The ordinance was subject to a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission at its meeting of January 26th of this year, and at the meeting of February 23rd of this year, the Commission recommended approval of the ordinance for the 8 reasons as outlined in the motion. And then in respect to conditional use 2369, Mr. Chairman, this relates to, as Mr. Robertson described, a parcel of land located on the south side of Lewis-Georgetown Highway, which is Route 9, approximately 0.4 mile east of the intersection of Sandhill Road and Lewis-Georgetown Highway. The 911 address is 22242 Lewis-Georgetown Highway, Georgetown, and the tax parcel ID is District 135, Map 15, parcel 98.00 and 98.01. Submitted into the record for the conditional use application. We have a copy of the applicant's conceptual site plan. We have a copy of the applicant's exhibit booklet and maps. We have a copy of a letter received from the Sussex County Engineering Department, Utility Planning Division. We have a copy of the DEL.dot Service Level Evaluation Response. We have a copy of the plus comments and the applicant's response to the plus comments. We have a copy of a letter received from the Federal Aviation Administration. We have a copy of a letter received from Tidewater Utilities. And we have a copy of the applicant's assessment of environmental considerations. And I would note we have received 0 comments. CU 2369 was subject to a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission at its meeting of January 26th of this year, and at the meeting of February 23rd of this year, the Commission recommended approval of the application for the 10 reasons stated and subject to the 19 recommended conditions as outlined within the motion. And Mr. President, copies of both of those motions, along with the minutes of all 3 of those meetings described, is included in your paperless packets. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Any questions of council? Seeing none, Mr. Fuqua.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Jim Fuqua. I'm an attorney here in Georgetown, and I just said I don't think I can keep up the blistering pace of those first 2 hearings, so I'll do my best to move it along as quickly as I can. With me is Jack Hayes on behalf of the applicant, Leeward Chase Delaware LLC, and Jason Palkowitz from Solutions IPEM. As was stated, there was an exhibit book submitted with information regarding the application. And again, I'll just repeat, there are 2 applications being presented, and I'm going to address both of them in this presentation. So the first is the conditional use application. It's for multifamily dwellings consisting of 106 residential units. They'll be located in 53 duplex buildings, and the development's to be called Leeward Chase. And then the second application is to amend the county's future land use map designation for this parcel by changing it from the existing commercial area to the designation of the developing area. The parcel of land involved contains 50.79 acres. It's located on the south side of Route 9, just east of the boundaries of the town of Georgetown. The area around the site contains a wide variety of existing uses. To the west or to the left of the site are some residences and some woodlands. To the north, which would be on the north side of Route 9, again, are some residential homes and a commercial strip of land that is Zone C1. That strip contains a number of existing businesses, including ServPro, Dixie Construction, Delaware Home Health Care, Tech Glass, and then there's some additional conditional uses that are in that area. To the east or to the right of the site, fronting on Route 9, is the Route 9 liquor store, and then the rest of the eastern boundary of the site is adjacent to Sports at the Beach, which you're all familiar with. It was a conditional use that was approved by the county. It's basically a baseball facility where youth baseball tournaments are held. Sports at the Beach site contains about 100 acres. It contains 16 baseball fields, and then there's a number of other associated things there. There's a welcome center, concession stands, there's an academy, and then there's accommodations on site for players and their families, as well as playgrounds, basketball court, and swimming pool. The southern boundary, or to the boundary to the bottom of the site, actually will be adjacent to the Lewis-Georgetown bike trail. You're all familiar with that. The trail now exists from Lewis to Fisher Road, and the first section of the trail from Georgetown going east has been constructed. When completed, you'd be able to bike between Georgetown and Lewis by way of the bike trail. The bike trail is basically located adjacent to the railway right-of-way that runs from Georgetown. That still is an active route between Georgetown and Gravel Hill. East of Gravel Hill, that has been removed. Along the active part of the railroad in this area, there will be a chain link security fence separating the railroad area from the bike trail, which I think has already been done on part of the trail in Georgetown. On the other side of the rail trail, you're all familiar with the county's Delaware Coastal Airport and the county industrial park. And I think with that mixture of things, you can see that this is a pretty unique area as far as the existing uses are concerned. The application was reviewed as part of the PLUS process in March of 2022. The PLUS comment letter was issued by the Office of State Planning in April of 2022. The PLUS letter states that the parcel is located in investment levels 2 and 3. These are areas where growth is anticipated, and it's also in a growth area under the county comp plan. The level 3 areas are some of the more environmentally sensitive portions of the site. Most, if not all, of the actual proposed site development will be located in investment level 2. And this is the area where the state strategies plan indicates that the state supports and encourages a wide range of uses, including departure from typical single-family developments in order to promote a broader mix of housing types with open space and recreational facilities. Again, as I said, we're proposing 53 duplex buildings containing 106 units. The land is zoned AR1. Multifamily dwellings, including duplexes, are a permitted use in the AR1 district as a conditional use in accordance with the provisions of the zoning ordinance. And there are 3 things I need to address before reviewing the actual specifics of the proposed site plan and the development. The first involves the comprehensive plan future land use map. What the county zoning ordinance actually provides is that for land that's in the AR1 district, to have a conditional use for multifamily units, that land needs to be in certain growth areas as designated in the comprehensive plan. And those growth areas are the town center area, the coastal area, and the developing growth area. Now, our site is actually in a growth area, but it's in the currently designated as being in the commercial growth area. So as a result, our first application is to have the future land use map designation of the parcel modified from the commercial growth area to the developing growth area. And Jamie, can you bring up the the future land use map, or I have a copy of it here if it's difficult to bring up. Okay. As you can see, referring to the map there, James, can you just blow that up a little bit? That's good. Our site is the red. They're right in the middle of the map. Adjacent to our site, both on the east and the west, as you can see, is that tan area. So that tan area is the developing area currently. So what we're proposing is to basically be amended to be the same designation as on either side of us right now. And then to the left, further to the left, that brownish area, that's all the town center area of Georgetown. And then that dark blue or purple area to our rear is actually the county, the airport, and the industrial park, which I think is an industrial under the comp plan. So what we're requesting here, again, it's one growth area to another growth area, and it's consistent with what's on either side of us now. This site has been designated commercial. There hasn't been any interested development in it commercially, and we believe what we're proposing here is a less intense designation than currently exists on the site. And by that, what I mean is in the comp plan states that in the commercial area, what exists there now, you can have concentrations of retail and service uses, including things like shopping centers and large uses like hotels, motels, car washes, auto dealerships, and things of that nature. They're appropriate now under the existing designation. We think changing it to the development area is more consistent with the nature of the area, and as I said, will permit the use that we're proposing. We think the existing, the things that would be permitted right now on it would already have more intense impacts related to noise, light, hours of operation, and things of that nature that may not be welcomed by the neighbors. So we do think that is an appropriate change. The second thing I want to address is the density. I don't think this comes up too often, but as you know, the zoning ordinance allows multifamily developments in the AR1 district at a density of 2 units per acre. But it does provide that you can pay an application fee if the council approves it for some density exceeding 2 units per acre. Our site contains 50.797 acres, so at 2 units per acre, that would permit 101.594 units. You'll note that we're requesting 106 units, so we're actually asking for 4.406 units in excess of 2 units. The zoning ordinance also provides that in this area around Georgetown, the development fee is $15,000 per unit in excess of the 2 units per acre. So as a result, if you do approve this conditional use for 106 units, the applicant would be responsible for paying a development fee to the county of $66,090, which is 4.406 times the $15,000 per unit. And that was a condition, a recommended condition of the Planning Commission. And then the third thing I want to explain is the nature of the proposed development, because normally a plan for multifamily development such as this would be to build it, to sell the units, and then at some point to turn the management and operation and responsibility of the community over to a homeowners association or condominium association. This proposed development is different. Unlike most developments of this type, these units are not proposed to be sold. The development is planned to be a residential rental community. The developer will own the land, they will own all the units, and will be responsible for all the maintenance, repair, and management associated with the duplex buildings, with the rec facilities, the roads, the stormwater, the landscaping buffers, in other words, the entire property. The development would be a market rate rental community. The residents would be entering into a lease agreement with the owner. This type of development is part of a new trend that's developing in the country called build to rent, and basically it's an investment by a developer, which, as the name implies, the development, be it single family, multifamily, or duplex, is actually built to rent, not to sell. And basically it creates a way of addressing more affordable housing option. I don't say affordable housing, but more affordable housing than conventional housing. So as I said, this trend is occurring in other parts of the country, and that's a business plan that's proposed for this area. Ultimately, it will establish more affordable, modern housing in the Georgetown area, as well as housing for people that live or work in the Lewis and Rehoboth Beach communities, which again would be accessible fairly easily from Route 9. So after with that introduction, let me get to the specifics of what we're proposing. Jamie, if you could just put the site plan up. Central sewer for the development will be provided as part of the Sussex County sewer system. The development will have gravity sewer lines connecting to an on-site pump station. The county engineering office has already indicated that wastewater capacity is available for the development. Central water for domestic use and fire protection will be provided by Tidewater Utilities. An ability to serve letter from Tidewater is in the record, and service will require an expansion of Tidewater's franchise area from the Public Service Commission. Stormwater management facilities will be designed and constructed in accordance with DNREC and sediment and stormwater regulations. It will be reviewed and approved by the Sussex Conservation District. A detailed delineation of wetlands was performed by Ed Linné of Environmental Resources, Inc. The study determined that the site contains 17.55 acres of federal jurisdictional non-tidal wetlands. Those wetlands are located in 3 areas. Jamie, if you can just slide that up a little bit there. There's one wetland area to the left, one right in the center, and then a large wetland area to the east. A jurisdictional determination had been submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers, and that determination was issued by that agency a couple of months ago. The wetland areas that you see there are forested. They will remain undisturbed except for a road crossing and a pedestrian trail crossing, which you can see right there. The road goes across that area, and there's a trail that will go across that area. That road crossing right there is where an old farm road with a culvert already exists, and these crossings will be authorized by and constructed in compliance with the Army Corps regulations. This application was filed prior to the adoption of the Resource Buffer Ordinance, so it's not technically subject to that ordinance. However, the applicant will be providing a voluntary 30-foot buffer adjacent to all of the non-tidal wetland areas, again, except where the road crossing is and the trail crossing is. And that 30-foot buffer would actually comply with the requirements of the new buffer ordinance. The property is located in Zone X on the FEMA flood insurance maps. It's outside of flood hazard area. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service indicated there were no record of any federally listed species or critical habitat on the site. As was mentioned, the Delaware Coastal Airport is located south of the property. As the airport is configured, the runway takeoff and landing glide paths actually go over sports at the beach and not directly impacted by this development. The applicant, however, did contact the Federal Aviation Administration. The FAA did what's called an aeronautical study. They did issue a determination of no hazard to air navigation dated April 3rd, 2022, and copies of those are in the record, basically indicating that the development does not have any impact. As to vehicle traffic, DelDOT indicated that based on traffic generation, the applicant could pay an area-wide study fee in lieu of a TIS. The actual Route 9 road actually meets DelDOT road standards of 12-foot travel lanes with 10-foot shoulders. So no actual additional road improvements to the road are required. The applicant will dedicate a 50-foot right-of-way from the center line of Route 9 along the site frontage if that right-of-way doesn't exist. And the applicant will also dedicate a 15-foot easement along the frontage along Route 9 and will construct a 10-foot shared use path along that easement. The site is located in the Sussex Central School District, and fire protection is provided by the Georgetown Volunteer Fire Company. As to the site design of the development, Jamie, again, if you could go to the site plan. Thank you. Maybe in the front, just something. That's good. Again, as I've stated several times, there will be 53 duplex buildings containing 106 residential units. That's a gross density of 2.08 units per acre, which is just slightly more than the 2 units per acre permitted for multifamily, and certainly consistent with the density permitted in the AR1 district. 60% of the units would be 2-bedroom units with a 1-car garage. 40% of the units would be 3-bedroom units with a 2-car garage. The entrance to the development would be from Route 9. It's approximately at the center of the site, and that would be at a location that is approved by DelDOT. The entrance would be designed and constructed in conformity with DelDOT requirements as to turn lanes and things of that nature. The internal streets and stormwater areas, as are depicted on the plan. There will be sidewalks on both sides of all development streets. There will be non-intrusive street lighting. As I mentioned, there will be a 10-foot public shared use path along Route 9 frontage, and that path along Route 9 would connect to the internal sidewalks, both at the main entrance and also from that cul-de-sac to the left. There'd be a sidewalk out to the shared use path. Also, where the cul-de-sac to the left is and that path is, that area would have a width of reinforced surface from the cul-de-sac to the shoulder of Route 9, which could serve as an emergency entrance to the development in the event there was a problem with the entrance, the regular entrance to the development. That would only be an emergency entrance. It would be a blocked entrance available for only emergency vehicles. There'd be a school bus stop located along Route 9. The exact location of that would be coordinated with the school district. There is a centrally located recreational area that will contain an outdoor pool and bathhouse and a building with a meeting room and a storage area. It's proposed that the recreational area will be completed prior to the issuance of the 60th residential building permit, which would mean the 30th duplex building permit. Can you go a little bit to the rear of the site, Jamie? There's another trail that actually would connect the units that are located to the rear of the property directly up to the recreational area. And if permitted by DENREC, there would be also a trail connecting the development street to the bike trail, which, as I said, isn't there yet, but will be located along the rear of the property. There'll be a 20-foot wide landscape buffer at appropriate locations along the boundary line. In the front of the property, there will be a 75-foot vegetated buffer along the site frontage on Route 9. And as I already mentioned, there'll be a 30-foot voluntary buffer from the non-tidal wetland areas, which would remain undisturbed except for the road crossing and the trail crossing. After we had the planning and zoning hearing, Mr. Hayes had some discussions with Mr. and Mrs. Larson, who own 2 properties to the west of the site. Anyway, they agreed with them that there would be a 6-foot vinyl fence constructed along their property line, And rather than me try to explain it, I just wanted to state this for the record. The applicants agreed that they're going to build a 6-foot vinyl fence that would go along the, I'll wait till you get that so you can see what I'm referring to. There's a property located in the northwest corner of our site. So that vinyl fence would go along that property on the west, then on the south, and then it runs down Mr. Larson's property to an area that becomes wetlands. So that would be where I'm representing that the applicant is doing that, is committed to do that, and that fence will be shown and noted on the final site plan should you approve this. All in all, open space as defined by the zoning ordinance, which includes wetlands, buffers, recreational areas, and other community common areas on this development will total 35.98, which is about 70% of the site, and that's well in excess of the required 40% required by the zoning ordinance. Again, as you know, this is an application for a conditional use, and the purpose of a conditional use is to provide for certain uses which are generally of a public or semi-public character and are essential and desirable for the general convenience and welfare. Now, as I stated, this development is going to create 106 duplex units, which will be market rate rental units. This use is essential and desirable for the general convenience and welfare of county residents due to the well-documented need for more affordable housing. And I know the council is well aware of that need from prior statements, from the recent revisions that the council did to the county's affordable rental program ordinance, and from specific language in the 2019 comprehensive plan. In addition, the town of Georgetown comprehensive plan, which was done in 2021, it states that Georgetown recognizes the importance of affordable housing and supports a balance of housing stock for all ages and incomes, including workforce housing. And lastly, in the plus letter from the comments of the Delaware State Housing Authority, I'm just going to quote them. The authority supports this proposed, this isn't a quote, but they state in there that the authority supports this proposed development, and it's noted that the need for additional housing affordable to a broader spectrum of county residents is well documented, and that additional market rate multifamily rental units will provide a more affordable housing option and help mitigate the housing insecurity experienced by so many county residents. So in closing, I know the council has recognized the need for more affordable rental housing, that this is a serious issue, and that it has to be addressed by the private sector. I mean, it's been made clear the county isn't going to be building affordable housing. That need that we're all aware of actually creates a business opportunity, because that demand creates a force to provide a supply to address that demand. And that's basically the way the free market system works. The question is, at appropriate places, and we certainly believe this is an appropriate place, that is not having any negative impact on anyone else. The map change is consistent with the designation of the surrounding areas, the development area. It's in close proximity to the Georgetown Town Center, and quite frankly, I think it's more appropriate than the current commercial designation. The conditional use request, again, addresses an established need for more affordable, modern rental housing near Georgetown in eastern Sussex County. That's clearly essential and desirable for the residents. At its meeting last Thursday, the Commission unanimously recommended approval of the future land use map amendment for 8 reasons, and approval of the conditional use application subject to conditions A through S. We do request your approval of the applications based on the well-reasoned findings of the Commission and subject to the conditions recommended by the Commission. I do want to just make one comment. I think it's condition C. I actually haven't seen the conditions. I mean, I listened to them, but I haven't read them. I think it's condition C. This is the one that says there'll be a condominium association set up to maintain, take care of everything. And as I explained, in this case, at least for the foreseeable future, there won't need to be a condominium association because nothing's going to be sold. There's only going to be the one owner. So I think it would be appropriate to add to that that the condo association will take responsibility, or the owner will be responsible for all maintenance, upkeep, and management. And unless you have any questions, that would conclude our presentation.
Questions of the council, Mr. Rieley?
I've got a number of questions, actually.
Okay, get started.
I mean, the last part of your presentation, you kind of made the argument that I was going to make, that the need for affordable housing / really workforce housing. And the proposed rents are $1,375 to $1,400 for a 1 or 2 bedroom in that range, or 3 bedrooms, $1,700 to $1,800. And you're calling that more affordable. I mean, more affordable and market rate are essentially meaningless terms. I mean, they have no definition. Market rate is whatever the market will bear. And you're coming in asking for 2 changes, 2 requests, and you're not presenting anything that suggests that you're going to be offering. Well, I'll put it this way: the units that would be under our workforce housing ordinance would rent in the $600 to $900 range, significantly lower than what's being proposed here. And I guess I don't understand why you would not have gone that route, because you could have had up to 12 units to the acre versus 2.08 is what you're requesting, which is still over what is zoned. Could add up to 12. This particular location hits all the marks. I mean, everything that we had in the ordinance that we were requesting. This is like the poster child for the perfect opportunity to create that type of housing scenario. And I mean, I don't understand why the applicant would not have taken advantage of that route. Really from a self-interest point of view, if nothing else. We've just gone through an election season where I heard this continuously, and I still hear it continuously. It was a hot topic. We finally, we've been talking about affordable housing / workforce housing for several years now. We finally got the ordinance approved within the last 6 months. It's out there. So granted, it would have taken some re-engineering and whatnot, but it could have yielded a plan that would have presented a lot of workforce housing in an area that desperately needs it. I mean, you could have been the poster child for why that program makes a lot of sense, and I don't understand. I'm looking for a reason to myself to why I could possibly vote in favor of this. And I would almost suggest if you wanted to reconsider this and come back, in a month or two, and we would absolutely make sure that we would fast track this and put it on the old business track and get it on the agenda quickly, with a plan that, might participate in the affordable rental ordinance. I mean, that's just where I am on it. To a degree, it's a political question. I grant that. I see that, but it is, and this is a desperate need. We've got hospitals that require nurses to live within 20 minutes of their work, and there is no housing for them within that range. And it is a huge goal of the county right now. It's part of our comprehensive plan, as you point out. And, maybe I'm making more of a statement than asking a question, but, maybe you could address these concerns. Maybe now's the appropriate time.
Well, 2 things I want to address. One is just the reality of being in the business, the development business. This application was filed over a year ago, all right, and that means the work started on this 2 years ago. So a lot of work was done here before the county, as you know, it was a process of revising the affordable housing ordinance because it hadn't been used, in 10 years or 12 years or however it existed. But, while that was being done, this was being developed, and, it was getting into the contractual obligations with the seller, coming up with a plan that would work. The developer, obviously, as I said, was aware of the need, and this was the way of coming up to addressing it with what we knew at that time, and maxing it out with what we think was an appropriate density. Again, the site had some constraints on it because of wetlands. It's 59 acres, but it isn't 59 acres of developable land. I think you can see the site plan. It utilizes the property, but it doesn't overburden the property. We're also aware of the fact that there's neighbors and people that maybe a higher density there wasn't appropriate at this location. So I certainly understand what you're saying, but that's where we were coming from. We were really developing this concept ahead of when all those other things happened. The second thing here, there's always this distinction between affordable housing and more affordable housing. Affordable housing, as you said, it's all relative.
Well,
if you can't afford it, it's not affordable housing.
There's definitions for workforce versus affordable.
Right, but
what we're looking for is workforce
more
housing.
affordable housing, and I just say, I live down, I bought a place down in Rehoboth in 1978. I was fortunate. I was ahead before these current prices. And number one, there are no rentals. There's very few rentals.
No argument.
Yeah, there's very few rentals. And one of the reasons is because you can have a 3-month rental period where you can make more money than doing year-round rentals. So there's just very few things that contributes to the problems we're having. So just creating any kind of rental, whatever the price is, as opposed to buying, makes it more affordable. As you know, if you buy a house, you know all the factors that go into, down payments, insurance, taxes, everything else that goes with that. Here, a person renting a place at market rates, they have a term. They have a 1-year term, whatever the term is. They have the ability to leave, and they don't have any of those other additional expenses. So there's different ways to help resolve the problem. Certainly the county's ordinance is one way, but I think a development of this nature is another way of doing it. So it's the accumulation of these solutions that will solve the problem.
I don't see how it even addresses the problem if you're talking about starting rentals at $1,375. That's the lowest. That's a single bedroom, presumably. $1,375.
There are no single bedrooms.
Well, the chart offered as 1 and 2 bedrooms. Okay, but $1,375 is a beginning entry-level rent for this project. Would not fit the criteria of workforce housing as we've defined it.
Well, again, I don't argue that point, but we're not under the ordinance.
More affordable and market rate are terms of art that are you're using to sell a project, but they're really meaningless. You're going to sell these at the market, whatever the market will bear, or rent them for whatever the market will bear, without regard to whether or not it addresses our goal of increasing the supply of workforce housing. It makes it difficult for me. I'm of the opinion lately that, if you're zoned for something, do what you're zoned for. But if you want to come in and request changes and upzoning or, rezoning or redoing of the maps and so forth, what do you bring to the table, to make it help us meet our goals too?
Well, that confuses me a little bit because to me, the 106 units, rental units, does address part of the problem.
It's more inventory, but it's not meeting that price level that we're looking for.
Well, I understand it doesn't meet the ordinance, but it wasn't filed under the ordinance. We disagree.
Conversely, I would submit, and I don't have a crystal ball, but there is an enormous need for rentals in our community. And I suspect that these units will be rented up before the slabs are in the ground.
That may be. That may well be. But we still have this need.
Mr. Rieley, can Mr. Hayes comment?
Absolutely.
For the record, my name is Jack Hayes, and I live in Lewis. And I've been working out here for since 2004 with Mr. Fuqua and others. When we looked at this piece of property, our desire was to try to find properties where we could build to rent type properties, just as Mr. Fuqua explained. That is one investment vehicle that developers can look at. They build houses to rent them. When we first looked at the property, we engaged 2 different market studies, and it took in all of the available apartment and rental properties, including single families, from on the other side of Milford, clear to Route 54, from the DuPont Highway to Route 1. That was the study area that we did. We did one in 2001. We did another follow-up study in 2002. Both of those studies said that all of the apartment units that were built previously to those 2 studies were full. They were totally rented up.
No argument.
What has happened to rents is the rents have also increased dramatically since that time, and they have remained full. We wanted to try to find another vehicle to where a fireman with his 2-year-old daughter and a bag of groceries doesn't have to climb 3 flights of stairs to get to a 3-bedroom apartment big enough for his family. Therefore, this concept, which has been used in the Carolinas quite often, it's an almost identical plan, provides for a garage, it provides for 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and it provides a 2-car garage and a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. The current zoning of the property, but for one common wall, would be a single family and certainly in compliance with the zoning.
I understand.
By combining the units, we can give more open space, we can utilize the property properly, we reduce the impact on Route 9, which is already congested, and we can give that fireman or that nurse or that family a home that is close to their job, where they don't have to go to Salisbury to rent a place big enough to work in Georgetown or in Sussex County. That was the concept. And in the second study that we did, it was very pointed. You need to build duplexes. They aren't available. These are single story. These are not 2-story. ADA compliant, elderly compliant, all of those factors are taken into consideration in these plans. So that was the rationale behind it. And I can't argue the fact this is not a subsidy program. This is not intended under the current ordinance for, quote, workforce housing. This is market. But it's a different part of the market. It's a close-in, family-oriented, or people that would work for the county government or for the explosive growth that we're having in the medical industry right now to find places for these people to live who don't have 20-30% down to put down on a $700,000 house.
Totally get it. You're making the argument for me, but what you're all going to
understand.
be offering is, double the rate that would be offered under the affordable rental ordinance for the set-aside units.
It may be.
Literally double.
But what we're
And I don't see how that works for a fireman or a nurse or a teacher, honestly.
We're offering basically a single-family environment for someone who can't afford that down payment, who wants to work here, and would like to have a nice community to live in.
I understand, but it does nothing to address that need for that price level that is literally no supply of. Nothing. And in return, you could up to 12 units the acre, potentially. It's an expedited process. And I'd give you my assurance. This is my district. I'd give you my assurance. We'll get this back on as old business rapidly at your convenience. You don't have to go back to the end of the line if you wanted to reconsider it.
Well, actually, it would be, there wouldn't even be a public hearing.
Right.
That would be a site plan review.
Exactly.
Well, that wasn't the intent of it. That wasn't the route.
I just
that we
find it
were
very hard
intending take.
to, when there's these options on the table, and if our building community is not going to avail themselves of it, then we're not going to make any progress towards the goals that we're trying to reach.
Well, Mr. Rieley, again, I gotta go back to, this was developed 2 years ago.
I understand.
The ordinance change was just
Things change
in the
over
past
time.
year. Yeah, things have changed.
Right.
We've been in line for a year waiting for this hearing. I mean, we've been waiting for this
Understand.
hearing for a year.
Well, I mean,
And if the rules change, it doesn't mean we should have to go back and redo everything.
I'm not suggesting you should necessarily, but I would offer this as the other option that might be out there, is council could require that projects of this nature have a 20% set aside. That's been done in other counties surrounding us, that's just the requirement. You have to have a 20% set aside, and if you don't, then, you pay a fee, which would go into our housing fund. I mean, that's the hammer approach, which nobody wants to use.
And if next week, if someone comes to see me, I'm going to say, here's what the council's thinking. So,
I mean,
but a year ago, we were doing this a year ago before all these terms came up. So give us some leeway here that, we're not ignoring what the county did. The county hadn't done it when we.
You could be a little bit nimble, react. I mean,
Well, be a little bit nimble. We've been waiting for a year. You kind of lose your nimbleness after a year of waiting.
well, I'm not going to badger you, but I think I've made my point clear. And
Well, and again, the only thing I would say is I understand your point, but I also note that the town of Georgetown says there's a need for some affordable housing, more affordable housing. The state housing authority says the same thing. The developer was trying to respond to that need. It may not be the price mark.
I don't see how it does.
Well, it does.
Just more market rate rentals.
Well,
Which
I
is
know,
a
but that's
need.
part of the.
I have no doubt that they will rent. No doubt in my mind whatsoever. But it doesn't
Okay.
do anything to move the needle towards the market that we're trying to
All right.
address.
Okay.
Anything else?
No,
More questions to council?
that was quite sufficient.
No, I'm just making sure you had anything else from council? I do have just a curiosity thing. Somebody show me on here all this open space. And how people access the open space. That's your job?
Well, no, I said
Somebody point everything back up
well, no, the open space.
and show me where the open space is and how somebody accesses it.
Well, they don't access the wetlands.
Other open space. Walk through somebody's backyard.
Well, again, we have the recreational area. The county zoning ordinance defines open space, has a definition of open space. So when I say this is open space, I'm saying this meets the county's definition of open space. Okay. I'm not saying it's all accessible, but that's a county definition, so
Thank you.
I'm just telling you that.
Thank you. Anybody else? We're good.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Whitehouse, just while Mr. Fuqua is still up here, I think I saw some email traffic about Plus and whether one of these, do you want to elaborate on that?
Correct. So the conditional use application did go through Plus and was reviewed by Plus. The amendment to the future land use map in 2022, around about the time this application was being submitted, the State Planning Office asked that we change our approach. Prior to that, everything would go through Plus prior to the application being heard by County Council. After that process that we adopted last year, applications would go through Council's process for the future land use map amendment, and then pending the outcome of the public hearings, they would then go through the Plus process for the future land use map amendment. My understanding is that the applicant has prepared a submittal. I've received that. That came in to be submitted to Plus, but that we haven't taken the ordinance through Plus yet. The CU did. The CU has gone through and it's been reviewed. So we would have to hold the record open for receipt of Plus comments on the future land use map amendment. Okay. Which we could do as quickly as 3 weeks from now. The deadline is the start of the month. So.
Okay. So.
And again, just since we're talking about that, I do want to restate for the record, because there's been a bit of controversy about these amendments to the land use map. The state law is very clear. It's very absolutely clear. The county council has the final say, period. It's not the state planning office. It's not the committee on state planning issues. regardless of what they even recommend, it says the county council has the final say. So from following this over the last year, I've been a little bit frustrated by what the state seems to be trying to take over something that the statute clearly says is opposite.
No, and there's no disagreement about that, Mr. Fuqua. The issue is it's more of a process issue. If you or anybody had applied for that map amendment and it gone to plus back, a year or so ago, Office of State Planning would have said that it's our application, and they would have made Mr. Whitehouse.
I've been there. I went through this, okay?
And they wouldn't let you speak, and Mr. Whitehouse wouldn't have the information.
And then they say this is a bad idea because nobody presented any reasons why they should change the map. And it's like, but you wouldn't let us talk.
That pretty much sums it up. So that's why we have to do it this way for now. So anyway, okay. Anything else, Mr. Whitehouse, or anything within council? All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuqua. We'll see if there's anyone here present who would like to speak in favor of this application. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor? Seeing none in the room, is there anyone present in the room who would like to speak in opposition? Sir, if you'd come to the podium and give your name and place of residence for the record.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is John Randolph. I reside at 21269 Airport Road with my wife, Victoria. The property's name is in her name. Her family name is Caramonica. And we are we're the last property before the railroad track. At the very, I guess it would be at the far end, away from the highway, at the far end of the development. Now, it is, of course, it is a political issue all the time, affordable housing, the amount of affordable housing, more affordable housing, whatever the political speak, legal speak is. We've been here almost 5 years, and almost every conversation I've had with anyone in the county has been, there's a short list of complaints, because we do live in a beautiful part of the country, in a beautiful county, and we're lucky to live in a small town as beautiful as this. But the top of the short list of complaints all the time is sprawl and overdevelopment. Every time I talk to somebody, it's the same conversation. We make the turn on the country road to go out to the food line, and our wine is turning into vinegar, and then we make a face. Lady says to her husband, my goodness, another housing development. There's no more corn going to go in that field. And everybody knows once that happens, that's gone forever. So every bit, what overdevelopment and sprawl does, most of the time, not all the time, is it makes our lives worse. It makes the air worse. It makes the water worse. It makes our view of this beautiful county, this beautiful ancient colonial county, it makes it worse. I have a couple of proposals. First of all, one of the main issues is I work down in Rehoboth Beach, and to get back to my home on this highway here at rush hour, it borders on the word preposterous now. I tell people I live in a rural county in a small town, and they can't believe what I follow with the traffic. Between 4 and 6 in the afternoon, from Park Avenue on the other side of the airport all the way to DuPont Highway is about a 3.5-mile long traffic jam. And you can look at, this is midday, this is Tuesday, look at the traffic. Look at that traffic, this is Tuesday. And you're proposing, gentlemen, along with the developer, 106 units right there at that choke point, which is Airport Road and the highway, which is, I think, there's going to be a lot of young people. There's going to be a lot of cars here. I think between 150 and 200 more cars here. Now, this obviously, my wife and I, this is going to do nothing for our quality of life. We're just passing through the world right now. We're not going to be here forever. But the lighting back there, the light pollution, the ambient light, the noise, the fumes. But I hear in the presentations all the time, I hear there's a sports complex, there's a liquor store, there's a ServPro. This may be for people, nurses. I know I'm not allowed to specifically address anybody. I'll do it in a general way. I have been a teacher and a fireman. I have never been able to afford $1,700 a month, but whatever. You don't have to gavel me. I'll move on with that. Also, residents in this property, especially back in the backside of this property, behind the Caramonica, our property, are a number of species, and 2 of them are disposable, most people would say, because they're abundant. One is going to be Canadian geese, and the other one's going to be white-tailed deer. There is already, with development, you're already going to get something that I like to just call broadly barriers and impediments. And as I mentioned with us, to our quality of life, we have barriers and impediments from overdevelopment and sprawl. But the animals, the birds, the turtles, the frogs, whatever that live there, a lot of them, they don't have homes, they don't have domiciles, they live in habitat. They have to move from point A to point B and then back to point A again, whether they're caring for their young, whether they want to drink water, whether they're looking for food. When you have a barrier or an impediment, like this bike path, which is, to me, wasn't the greatest idea in the world. It's well done. I will give kudos to whoever developed it. It is top quality, every bit of that, including the fencing. But it sequesters the white-tailed deer over towards the airports, which eventually pushes them out on the road, which is dangerous for motorists. It sequesters the turtles, which have to go to the waterways in order to drink and go back to dry land in order to lay their eggs. So again, they're sequestered as well. But people would say, you know, we have Canadian geese up to our necks. We don't need more. We can lose dozens or hundreds of them. So what? You can say the same thing about white-tailed deer. We are up to our necks, up to our noses in white-tailed deer. There are too many of them. Yes, they actually have to put permits out to hunt them. They're overpopulated. But there are 4 species I'm going to mention right now, which are not. They are scarce. They are not necessarily endangered or protected yet. 2 of them are birds. There's 1 turtle and there's 1 frog. The 2 bird species, now these birds can get up and move. They're not as, their needs are not as urgent as the frog and the turtle species are. But the stilt sandpiper flies all the way from the point of South America, Tierra del Fuego, all the way to the Arctic Circle. It stops in Bombay Hook, it stops at the Delaware Bay, but it also stops here at the dry pond, the runoff pond over at Sussex Academy, and it also stops at the back part of this pond here, which has not been determined to be federal. I don't know why they just said this is the federally protected waterway. That is a little festering little swamp that they call. I know that property very well behind the house. And the Larsons family, the Larsons are very, very good as far as people passing on their property. They've never objected. So I know the land very well. Right there at the railroad track, the proposal is to take the most animal and wildlife abundant waterway is going to be paved over. That is not considered a waterway. But if you look at the 1987, if you'll refer to the 1987 Army Corps of Engineers delineation manual, states that any body of water which supports aquatic vegetation, part or all of the year, can be determined, not definitely, can be determined to be a wetland. So I think what's being paved over there is a wetland. That brings me to my 4 species. I already mentioned the stilt sandpiper, which stops here. Not endangered. They're very, very abundant in the Midwest, but they're beautiful to see. They come here in May, and on their way back to Tierra del Fuego, they stop here in October. Very beautiful. One that has roots, very, very deep roots in the air, and we hear the squawk, squawk. You may have heard that. You say to yourself at 8, 9 o'clock at night on a beautiful evening in June or May, what is that bird? Right on the railroad track there, behind this waterway that's going to be paved over, is a species called a yellow-crowned night heron. It raises its hatchlings there. It feeds in the pond, both the pond at Sussex Academy and the pond behind our house, which is in the back of this property. Would hate to see him go. The yellow-crowned night heron can go somewhere else. Fine. 2 species that cannot. One is called a barking tree frog. It is the largest tree frog on the east coast of the United States. When it puffs itself up, it's about this big. It looks not quite as big as a tennis ball. It looks like a line. Now, it has expanded its range from the south in the last 30 years up the coast, maybe because of climate change, if you believe in such things. A lot of people do. It is protected. It is scarce and protected in Tennessee and Maryland. It is not. It is scarce in Delaware. It is not protected yet. I'm going to see if it can be in the future. That's going to be one of the things I pursue. If you hear the barking tree frog, you'll never forget it. It sounds literally like a little dog. Ruff, ruff, ruff. It's a little dog barking. And it is very, very small in its population, and I think it should be protected. And it loves this pond that's right along the railroad track. The other species, which I feel can't go anywhere, it's a little bit more in abundance than the barking tree frog, is a soft-shelled, smooth soft-shelled turtle. If you've ever seen one of these, they're like the gentleman's sport jacket there. They're like that color. They have a long Pinocchio nose. It's a beautiful species. It's actually a very large turtle. It lives and raises its young and feeds in that pond right there. that is going to be paved over with asphalt, with a townhouse, whatever, vinyl siding, paint, whatever. It's going to be gone forever. In order to do that, you can't evict this species of turtle. You literally have to kill it by digging it up and paving over. And I'm not coming here as a Democrat, Republican, as for development, as a green tree hugger or whatever. Certainly not. I'm coming here as a Christian, and I ask any developer or anybody involved in this, what gives you the right to destroy what you cannot create? And I want you to think about that, okay? Out of the 6 species I mentioned, 2 of them are very abundant and will be around for a long time, the Canadian geese and the white-tailed deer. 2 of them can fly away. 2 of them cannot. One is very endangered. Remember, the barking tree frog, and the other one is the smooth soft-shelled turtle, which will be killed by the dozens or hundreds when this is filled in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Going once, going twice. It appears that there's no one else who wishes to speak in opposition. Operator, is anyone on the line who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to either the future land use amendment or the multifamily conditional use?
If there is anyone on the line who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to either of these applications, please dial 5 star. We have Yul Lee on the line. Yul Lee, your line is open.
You may proceed, Ms. Lee.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I wasn't really prepared to speak today, but while I was listening to the conversations, I thought I should. I think most of you know that I'm a proponent of the duplexes and quadruplexes because I think we need to conserve energy. And as Mr. Hayes said, sharing the wall really can help us save energy, especially Delaware not being able to generate much energy going forward. So I think that's a good direction. And I also appreciate the gentleman's comment about the barking frog and the other turtle in the area. And I agree that we need to protect our environment. Just recently, I happened to stumble into the Delaware Ecological Network map, and I could not believe how much of the core environmental area had been destroyed by the subdivisions, and the corridor, the animal corridors have been destroyed. So one day I hope to share that map with you, but today I'd like to say that I agree we need to have more rental homes, and the county has created the Workforce Housing Ordinance, hoping that we would have a lot of developers rushing to build the multifamily homes, but that is not happening. And what we are hearing so far is that it's the economy. Well, you know, one of the conversations before was that the public opposition was the main reason the multifamily homes were not built in the last decade. Only the single-family homes were built. But it looks like it's not just the public opposition. It is the economy. And we have to realize that so many retirees from around the area are coming here because the living cost is low for them, for their standards in Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York. For them, the living cost here is very low, even at $700,000 homes, because their homes go over $1 million. They can buy them in cash. The problem that causes here is the Delaware natives or who never had a chance to buy a house. They don't have the property that goes up as the retirees bringing money raise the the property values up. So we need to really think about what we are doing. And another thing I wanted to mention is that a few weeks ago, a gentleman from Bridgeville came and spoke about how all the economic development is going into the eastern side of Sussex, and people from the west have to travel to work. And he almost begged to bring some economic development to the west. And I think that's what we need to really look into. And as I watch the new applications coming, I can see some subdivisions or apartments are going into the western side, and some businesses are going to the western side. However, I also see a lot of heavy industrial type or high commercial applications that are going into District 1 and 2. And I think Sussex County needs to come up with a true master plan. You know, comp plan is supposed to be like a master plan for the 10 years. However, comp plan keeps getting changed. And I think we really need to look at the whole county and set aside green spaces, industrial areas, and residential areas, and look into those environmental concerns too, like the ecological network, and set aside the places, and then find ways to compensate the farmers, the landowners who cannot sell to the multi-family or subdivisions for high price. So I'm sorry I'm rambling on today, but I just wanted to share my idea about, you know, what Sussex County would have to do going forward. And I know that Sussex County is working on the master plan, the zoning ordinance. That name master plan is a little bit confusing or deceiving, because when people hear master planning, they think it's a top-down, planned by the county, which we absolutely think we need. The zoning ordinance we are working on, called master planning, is not by the county, but it's the bottom up. It's the developer initiated, and we give control over to them for the next at least 10, 20 years. So I'm sorry, but I thank you for hearing me today, and I hope the decisions you make are the best for the future of Sussex County. Thank you.
Thank you. Operator, is anyone else who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to ordinance number 2207 or conditional use number 2369?
Is Harry Larson on the line? Harry, your line is open.
Thank you. Members of the council, everyone there, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to my concerns. As I stated at the planning and zoning meeting, I was not for nor against this development. I just want to make sure things are done right. And it's done to protect myself and my neighbors. And after the meeting, I met with the developer and the attorney, and I've got a better outlook on what's going on. I've looked through the prints, I've looked through the verbiage, and they are addressing my concerns. I have emailed a few times with Jim and Jack and Jason, and they have agreed to my privacy fence, and they've agreed to the 20-foot buffer off my property. I will let you know that I am happier with the residential aspect of things and not the more commercialized area which it was cited for. I just want to tell you that as far as I'm concerned, the developer and the attorney have been good to me to work with. And like I said, it's up to the council what they deem. And I just want to thank you all for listening to my concerns.
Thank you, sir.